not doubt Israel's determination to defend itself on every front.
We need Greenland for national security. One way or the other, we're going to get it. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen.
2026, the flashpoints that could set the world on fire. 2025 was the year the old rules stopped working. And 2026 is the year the new rules get tested. Not in speeches, not at summits, but in blood, in oil, in sea lanes, in undersea cables, in chip factories. Because we've entered an era of global realignment. The old giants are retreating, new players are rising, and the unipolar world has become multipolar. And in a multipolar world, red lines aren't limits anymore. One simple rule for 2026, states are no longer chasing peace. They're chasing advantage, and advantage is paid for with chaos. The key concept, latent flashpoints. 2026 might not be the world war, but it's almost guaranteed to be a year of chaos, because 2025 already reignited conflicts we thought were frozen. Iran and Israel, the first direct clash, short, brutal, revealing. India and Pakistan. One attack can trigger a nuclear spiral. We've seen how fast it can climb. Thailand and Cambodia, fighting, a fragile ceasefire, rising tension again. The classic pattern of a conflict that returns. These are latent flashpoints. The tension is known. The incentives to escalate are known. What we don't know is the spark and the timing. And in 2026, the world doesn't have one single global COP anymore. It has blocks, interests, shifting alliances. So a local spark can become a regional crisis, then a global shock before diplomats even reach the microphones. 1. Israel/USA versus Iran. The countdown. Confusion, anxiety, threats. West Asia is on the edge of rupture. The White House has been blunt. Trump has drawn a red line. Not nuclear, not Israel. Executions. If the killing of protesters continues in Iran, there will be serious consequences. This message was not public. It was delivered directly to the Iranian regime. The result? Nearly 800 planned executions were suspended. This is not a coincidence. It's a concession. Trump is ready, but not in a rush. All options remain on the table. And that means one thing. The military option is not off the table. Trump reportedly watched videos of public executions in Iran. Hangings, staged spectacles. According to multiple sources, it deeply affected him. So why didn't he strike? The 4 breaks that stopped the attack. First break, Iran temporarily halted executions, a calculated move.
Yesterday's dramatic escalation makes averting all-out war an even more urgent challenge.
Would Iran fully back Hezbollah? How would they support Hezbollah?
By any means necessary. Whatever they need, Iran will give to them.
The Trump factor. Unpredictability as a weapon. One rule dominates. No one knows what Trump will do, not even his allies. Last June, he promised a decision in 2 weeks. He struck a few days later. Unpredictability is not a weakness. It's a strategy. Appear restrained. Strike when the enemy lowers its guard. Greenland. The war that begins in the ice. The end of a Western taboo. Since 1949, the Atlantic Alliance has rested on a sacred principle. Hit one ally, you hit them all. An allied territory is inviolable. Greenland. But beneath that ice lies one of the greatest geopolitical prizes of the 21st century. Why Greenland is worth more than the Middle East. Greenland is not just an island, it is the key to the Arctic, the key to new global shipping routes, the key to rare earth metals, and the key to the world's future energy system. As the ice melts, 3 things emerge.
We consider the people of the United States not just our allies, but our friends. And plunging us into a downward spiral would only aid the very adversaries we are both so committed to keeping out of the strategic landscape.
Why Trump wants Greenland.
We need Greenland for national security. One way or the other, we're going to get it. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen.
Trump never wanted to buy Greenland as a publicity stunt. He wanted to remove it from European influence and place it under American control. Because for Washington, Greenland is simple. If Russia and China gain a foothold there, the United States loses the Arctic. And losing the Arctic means losing the next Middle East. What changes in 2026? Russia is militarizing the Arctic. China now calls itself a near-Arctic nation. It is financing ports, research stations, and undersea cables. And Denmark, which technically owns Greenland, does not have the power to defend it alone. So Trump is pushing a blunt strategy. Either Greenland moves under the American security umbrella, or NATO brings it there by force. The scenario that could trigger the crisis. It starts with something that looks ordinary. A Chinese port, a research base, an undersea cable, a radar installation. Washington accuses Beijing of building disguised military infrastructure. Trump responds, the Arctic is a red line. NATO mobilizes. Troops deploy to Greenland. Warships begin patrols. Russia protests. China threatens retaliation. Denmark is trapped. Why this is a geopolitical bomb? Because this crisis involves three superpowers at once: United States, Russia, China. And it pulls NATO into the equation. One naval incident, one intercepted aircraft, one downed drone. And suddenly, the coldest war on Earth becomes a hot one. Final shock line. Greenland is not ice. It is the future energy, military, and economic map of the world. And in 2026, Trump and NATO are ready to fight for it. 3. US, China, Taiwan. The scenario that can blow up everything. Why Taiwan is the most dangerous theater? If you had to watch one place in 2026, watch the Taiwan Strait. Because this isn't just a regional conflict. It's the #1 risk in geopolitics, a direct collision between two superpowers. And that collision doesn't start with hatred. Taiwan sits at the heart of advanced semiconductors and semiconductors power, the modern economy, modern weapons, AI, communications, drones, the future battlefield. So Taiwan isn't an island, it's a global artery. The real play, win without declaring war.
China will surely be reunified.
Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes, that's the commitment we made.
China doesn't need to invade tomorrow. The smartest, most likely scenario is the gray blockade. Not an invasion, a squeeze. Military exercise zones that become permanent. Technical inspections. Pressure on shipping routes. 3 escalation scenarios in 2026. A. Gray blockade. Everything stays below the war threshold, but the economy chokes. You don't destroy the island, you make it ungovernable. B. Accident. A ship cuts too close. An aircraft pushes the line. A collision. A warning shot. And politics takes over. No one wants to look weak. C. Political window. A moment when Beijing decides Taiwan is drifting too close to independence, Washington is reinforcing support too much, or domestic pressure demands a show of strength. Exercises turning into permanent routines. Cyber spikes synchronized with military drills. Parallel crises around the Philippines/Japan. Weapons announcements plus political posture shifts in Taiwan and the US. Viral punchline. The danger in Taiwan isn't an invasion tomorrow morning. The danger is that in 2026, a crisis can start without war and end like a world war. NATO versus Russia. Europe on the brink of war. France and the United Kingdom on the front line. While the world is watching Taiwan, Gaza, and Greenland, the real powder keg is in Europe. Because the war in Ukraine is no longer a local conflict. It is a frozen war, waiting to reignite. And in 2026, that freeze could break. Why NATO and Russia are approaching the breaking point. Since 2022, Russia and NATO have been playing an extremely dangerous game. Weapons deliveries, indirect strikes, intelligence sharing, mercenaries, drones, long-range missiles. Everyone is fighting without officially being at war. But that gray zone is getting thinner. Because Moscow sees every NATO base in Eastern Europe as a noose tightening around its neck, and NATO sees every Russian advance as an existential threat. Why France and the United Kingdom are on the front line. The United States is increasingly focused on China and Taiwan. So in Europe, France and the United Kingdom are stepping forward. France brings troops, drones, missiles, and rapidly deployable special forces. The UK brings naval power, intelligence, and a deep strategic obsession with containing Russia. And both countries share one red line. If Russia wins in Ukraine, the European order collapses. The scenario that could ignite Europe. It starts with an incident. A Russian missile hitting a NATO convoy, a drone striking too close to Poland, an undersea sabotage in the Baltic Sea. NATO responds, Russia retaliates, and suddenly, French and British forces are no longer advisors, they are combatants. Why this would be worse than Ukraine? Because this would no longer be a proxy war. It would be Russia versus France, United Kingdom, Germany, and behind them, NATO. And when nuclear-armed blocs face each other directly, every mistake becomes existential. The truth no one likes to hear.
We are the only remaining global superpower at this point, and we have interest everywhere. We're not out in the world seeking imperial expansion, nor are we out in the world doing favors for people. We're just looking out for our own interest, which happen to be worldwide.
Europe is no longer a continent at peace. It is a front line waiting for a spark. And in 2026, France and the United Kingdom are prepared to intervene because they believe waiting would be worse. Final punchline. The next great European war will not start in Paris or London. It will start somewhere between the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea. And when France and Britain enter the fight, there will be no way back. 5. India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. The triangle that derails itself. Why? It's unstable. Here, the danger isn't only states, it's non-state actors, attacks, militias, armed groups that can trigger escalation no government officially ordered. That's what makes this region terrifying. Even if Delhi, Islamabad, and Kabul don't want war, war can still arrive because there's a machine. Terrorism accusations, media pressure, the public anger, armies on alert, leaders trapped by the optics of weakness. One attack creates a demand for retaliation. Retaliation creates a demand for counter-retaliation. And that spiral becomes conflict. 2026 triggers. A major attack plus unclear claim. A retaliation strike hitting the wrong target. An actor exploiting chaos to push escalation. Shock line. Here, war can start without anyone signing an order. It starts when someone hits share. 6. Thailand. Cambodia. The border that keeps coming back. Why it can flare again. This conflict has the classic escalation profile. Historical resentment plus nationalism plus border incidents plus mines plus escalation. Late 2025, heavy fighting, then a fragile ceasefire. But that kind of ceasefire isn't the end. It's a breath, a tactical pause. And when both sides use the crisis to mobilize the country, conflict becomes politically profitable. The real risk isn't a military duel. It's domestic political gears. When standing firm becomes a winning slogan, when backing down becomes national humiliation, when every incident becomes proof the other side is preparing something. Shock line. When politics needs enemies, the border becomes a film set. 7. U.S., Venezuela. Pressure until it breaks. Here the logic isn't necessarily invasion, it's pressure, limited strikes, seizures, operations, economic suffocation. The goal, force the regime to crack, split, collapse from the inside. 2 2026 scenarios. A. Pressure to internal rupture. Mass protests, military fractures, a fall from within. Washington gets what it wants without occupation. B. Pressure to resistance. The regime holds, hardens, controls, buys time, waits for a political shift. Either way, Venezuela stays a fixation point because every escalation carries the risk of missteps, overreaction, accidents. Shock line. This conflict isn't decided on the battlefield. It's decided by who can endure pain longer. 8. Ecuador. The war that doesn't call itself a war. The shock twist. When we think 2026 conflicts, we picture states fighting. But one of the most violent battlefields can be a country labeled peaceful on the map. Ecuador is a brutal slide. In a few years, violence explodes, gangs fragment, brutality escalates. And the mechanism is terrifying. When a country has two major cartels, you can sometimes negotiate. When it has 40, you don't have a war. You have a marketplace of violence. Cocaine routes, ports, extortion, illegal mining. And one logic, to win, you terrorize harder than the next group. Shock line, a state can survive one enemy. It survives 40 far less easily. 9. Syria. Embers under ash. Why it stays flammable. Syria isn't stabilized. It's fragmented. Areas outside control, external rivalries, internal tensions, and actors who can force escalation. The typical risk, a clash around Kurdish zones, external pressure, an offensive, then domino effects, prison camps, insurgent resurgence, mass displacement. Shock line, Syria is a puzzle, and moving one piece cuts someone. 10. The Gen Z wave, instability across continent. Want a chaos multiplier in 2026? Look at the street. In 2025, mass mobilizations shook countries, even in the heart of Europe. When young people have no future, they don't wait for elections. They block. And in 2026, the ingredients remain. Cost of living, housing crisis, austerity, political instability, total distrust. Shock line. 2026 isn't only wars between countries, it's wars between governments and their own generations. So here are the new rules. Multipolarity, non-state actors, simultaneous crises, advantage before stability. 2025 rewrote the rules. 2026 will test them, not in conference halls, but on borders, in cities, and through maritime corridors. So the question isn't, will something happen? The question is, where will the first spark fall, and who will blow on it? If you enjoyed this video, like it and subscribe so you don't miss anything. Thank you for watching, and see you very soon for the next one.